This is Budapest. The person on stage is not a European diplomat. He is a young American activist who hasn't even finished college. And in the audience, there are prime ministers, the heavyweights of European politics, and influencers from all across the continent. How can this be possible? But what if I told you this is no coincidence? That this meeting is part of a plan to build a new kind of global alliance, one that operates completely outside the rules of traditional diplomacy. And what if I told you that this plan, whether you live in Ohio, São Paulo, or Rome, could change the future of your country? We call it the Ghost Network. Why Ghost? Because it has no physical headquarters. There is no official membership list. This network isn't bound by treaties signed in Washington, London, or Brussels. It is bound together by common enemies, common goals, and, most importantly, a common playbook. Its weapons aren't missiles or tanks. Its weapons are far more pervasive. Social media algorithms that play on your mind, viral content that targets your emotions, and culture itself, speaking directly to your soul. This global network also has an engine room, the place where the energy is generated, where the strategy is first tested, and where it's exported to the world, the United States. And like in every engine room, there are chief operators. Figures like Charlie Kirk are the names, running this machine and building the global connections. This is why, to understand the result in Italy, you first have to decipher a campus event in Arizona. To crack the tactic in Brazil, you have to decode a podcast in Florida. In this documentary, we will trace this very network. We will decode its journey from the American suburbs to the corridors of power in Europe and South America. How does this structure work? Who funds them? And most importantly, what is their ultimate goal? To trace this network, we must first understand its architecture. We must find the prototype, the one who drew the first blueprint for this massive structure and tested it. And that prototype is one person, his name Charlie Kirk. But Charlie Kirk tore up that rulebook. He refused to play the game. He built his own from scratch. How did this young man from the Chicago suburbs, who didn't even finish a 2-year community college, transform into one of the most powerful figures in the Republican Party, a figure whose calls are taken by presidents and billionaires? The answer lies in his refusal to knock on old doors and his decision to build his own. His weapon was not the traditional media. He didn't need the approval of the New York Times or CNN. His weapon was social media itself. Kirk didn't see politics as a series of boring policies. He translated it into a spectacle, a battle, and most importantly, a language that young people would understand. Memes, viral videos, provocative campus events. This was his arsenal, and using this arsenal, he built a massive grassroots army called Turning Point USA, which targets the very university campuses he criticized. But Kirk wasn't alone on this path. He was just the first spark. Soon, a fire had started. A new generation of digital revolutionaries emerged, building their own media empires: Ben Shapiro, Candace Owens, and Tucker Carlson. They named it clearly. This was a culture war. Their targets, the ideology they call woke liberal elites, and the institutions they claim are trying to tear down every pillar holding up the real America. This was about much more than winning an election. This was the ultimate conquest for the soul of the country. And at that moment, when they believed they had won this war on America's campuses, in its social media, and on its political stage, a new, much bolder objective appeared on the horizon. The question was no longer, how do we win? The question was, why not export this winning strategy, this playbook, outside of America? Why not turn this model into a global weapon? But this wasn't going to be done by planting American flags around the world. No, the strategy was much smarter, much deeper. What was to be exported wasn't the product itself. It was the production line. The formula would be adapted to local cultures, local languages, and local fears. All that was needed was to find the local operators, train them, and let them start the engine. And now, let's return to the beginning of the documentary, to that stage in Budapest. That crowd, those prime ministers, those influencers, that stage was not a beginning, but a result. It was the European premiere of the American culture war. It was the celebration of the most powerful brands in American politics, like CPAC, being transported out of Texas or Florida and right into the heart of Europe. Think of Giorgia Meloni's rise in Italy, fueled by the slogan God, Homeland, Family. Bolsonaro's digital war machine in Brazil, fueled by WhatsApp campaigns. The echo created by Vox on social media in Spain. Different countries, different languages, but the same echo. Create common enemies, global elites, Brussels bureaucrats, mainstream media, woke culture, gender ideology. These words were designed to trigger the same anger, whether they came from a think tank in Washington, a rally in Warsaw, a podcast in Sao Paulo, or a YouTube stream in Madrid. So, who is greasing the wheels of this massive global machine? Who provides these connections? Who funds these conferences? Were those massive dark money pools that targeted American campuses and local politics now changing direction? When we trace this financial labyrinth of billionaire donors, private foundations, and complex think tanks, we once again find the invisible architects of that ghost network. As you can see, this is no longer just an American story. This is a global operation that is evaporating national borders, bypassing traditional political parties, and rewriting the definition of power. And the next target of this operation is perhaps the screen you're holding in your hand right now. So, the technology that connects this network, the social media platforms, the algorithms, are they just a tool, or are they the plan itself? The answer is both. And this is the most disturbing part of the story. Technology doesn't just enable this ghost network to communicate. Technology is the network. In traditional warfare, you control the geography, the roads, the bridges, the ports. But in the digital age, you control the conversation. And the way to control the conversation is to understand the architecture of these social media platforms. These platforms are not neutral town squares. They are arenas designed to capture attention and optimized to hold it. And the Ghost Network's Playbook cracked the code of this arena long before its rivals. Consider the algorithm. The algorithm's job is not to show you the truth. Its job is to keep you on the screen. And the easiest way to keep you on screen is to trigger your anger, your fear, and your sense of belonging. This network gave the algorithm exactly what it wanted: constant conflict, an unending culture war, a clear division of us versus them. And the algorithm rewarded them. The result? Not just an echo chamber. This is a radicalization accelerator. Harsher videos, sharper arguments, clearer enemies. This is where the Playbook's digital arsenal comes into play. Not boring policy documents, memes, that turn a complex idea into an instant weapon with a single image, shared millions of times in seconds. The filters of traditional media, gone, in their place, podcasts and live streams. Hours-long content, claiming to be uncensored and authentic, building a personal bond directly with the viewer. Ben Shapiro's rapid-fire logic, Tucker Carlson's provocative monologues. This isn't news, this is a relationship. And of course, fake grassroots movements, astroturfing, organized comment armies, bot accounts, and digital trolls, making an idea suddenly appear to be coming from the people. An illusion, showing that the silent majority isn't actually that silent, it's just more organized. And the fuel for this massive machine? Data. Your data, every click, every like, every second you pause, is a signal determining who the next message will be sent to, when, and how. This network knows you better than you know yourself. It knows your fears, and it knows what triggers them. So, who runs a structure this complex, this expensive, and this pervasive? It can't just be operators like Charlie Kirk or faces like Ben Shapiro. Behind the curtain, who are the invisible architects? Who wrote this playbook? and who are quietly pumping fuel into this massive engine room? The answer isn't found in the shiny buildings of Washington or in the headlines. The answer is hidden deep in tax records, on the boards of private foundations, and in the quiet corridors of educational non-profit organizations. Charlie Kirk, Ben Shapiro, Candace Owens. They are the public faces of this movement, the operators in the engine room, but they did not invent the engine. They are simply its most efficient users. The ones who wrote the Playbook are a much older, much wealthier, and much more patient group. We call them the Strategists and the Financiers, decades-old, massively funded think tanks like the Heritage Foundation, the Federalist Society, the Atlas Network, and funding these organizations for decades with billions of dollars are family foundations and secretive billionaires. This didn't start with Trump or the 2016 election. This began decades ago when these groups decided on a long march. The ultimate goal was to fundamentally change the state, education, the judiciary, and most importantly, the culture. It was to take back every institution they believed had been captured by the liberal establishment. To do this, they needed a playbook. First, they produced the ideas, deregulation, tax cuts, the reshaping of the judiciary. Then, they needed a generation to spread these ideas. This is where funding for organizations like Turning Point USA came in. Their entry into campuses, their education of the youth, this was crucial. But they had a problem. The traditional media, their ideas, had to pass through the editorial desks of the New York Times or CNN. And often they didn't. And then social media exploded. This was not a coincidence for them. This was a gift. The moment they had been waiting for years had arrived. They no longer needed the middleman. They could deliver the playbook directly to the masses. For these financiers, social media influencers, activists on college campuses, sister movements in Europe or South America were all investments. An investment in controlling the culture, an investment in turning politics from a policy debate into an existential war between good and evil, between real patriots and global elites. And this investment is working. The leaders who read this playbook are no longer just in the opposition. In Italy, in Argentina, in Hungary, and even in Washington, they are in power. So, if this network is so powerful, so entrenched, and so well-funded, what is the endgame? If the ultimate goal is to win the culture war, what does victory look like? The answer is not a signing ceremony or a ceasefire. This isn't a moment. This is the construction of a new normal. This is a permanent redefinition of the world and your place in it. For the Ghost Network, victory, first and foremost, means the death of globalism. It means that structures like Brussels, Davos, the United Nations, which they see as unelected elites eroding national sovereignty, are either completely dismantled or neutralized. But this is not isolationism. This is a network switching operation. Victory means a new order where these independent nation-states are connected, not by traditional diplomacy, but directly through this ghost network, with a common ideology, a common playbook, CPAC in Washington, CPAC in Budapest, CPAC in Brazil. Political leaders no longer speak through ambassadors, they speak through these platforms. And domestically, victory is the day the culture war ends. Because one side has won unconditionally. Victory is when every idea they label as woke or gender ideology is completely ripped out of the curriculum on college campuses. In its place, the values of God, homeland, family, patriotic education become the single, undisputed foundation. Victory is the Daily Wire, becoming the new New York Times. It's the old media, CNN and the like, being reduced to the faint voice of the marginal opposition. Victory is the complete purge of the bureaucracy they call the deep state. This is not a revolution. This is a restoration project. The restoration of what they see as the real West, to its golden age before corruption and liberalism. But here there is a paradox. This ghost network drew its power from being against the establishment, So, what happens when it becomes the establishment? How will this brutally effective machine designed to take power behave when it has to hold power? Will it use the same weapons it used in opposition against a new opposition that questions its own power? Or is the final chapter of the playbook to end the game itself permanently? This is the darkest scenario, and this is no longer a conspiracy theory. This is the logical conclusion of what's written in the final pages of the playbook. When a movement bases its entire existence on fighting an enemy, and it defeats that enemy, what fills the vacuum? History gives us only one answer: new enemies. When the outside enemy is defeated, the machine turns on the inside enemy. Those who are not loyal enough, those who question the playbook, those who resist the restoration, and so the invisible architecture of the ghost network, that fluid, decentralized structure, suddenly morphs into something much harder, much more centralized, a control network. Remember those technological weapons they used in opposition: algorithms, data mining, organized digital armies. In power, these weapons are much stronger. They are no longer used just to persuade, they are used to ensure obedience. Imagine a social credit system, not just in China, but a patriotic version. A system where your stance on digital platforms determines your access to your bank account, your freedom to travel. A system operating under the banner of a commitment to our values score. What replaces podcasts and independent media? A single, official narrative, where the victors of the culture war decide what truth is, and every voice that questions that truth is labeled not just wrong, but traitorous or subversive, and is made invisible by the algorithm. A digital censorship, the final chapter of the playbook, is ironic. In place of the elites they set out to destroy, they create their own elite. One that is far more powerful, far more technological, and far more impossible to hold accountable. Is this the ultimate goal of the ghost network? Authoritarian, but with a populist veneer. International, but with nationalist language. Utterly controlling, but waving the flag of freedom. A new 21st century order. So, is this inevitable? Are there no brakes on this machine? Can this code not be broken? Or is there a flaw, a bug, inside this global engine that could slow it or even stop it? Is there a bug that can stop it? Yes, there is. And this flaw, this bug, isn't in the hardware or the algorithms. It's hidden in the very heart of the system's architecture, in its human nature. This ghost network draws its power from anger. It's built on constant conflict, a perpetual state of crisis, but anger is a powerful fuel, and it burns out very quickly. You cannot keep a society, a network, a movement, perpetually at the peak of outrage. People get tired. The crisis, after a while, becomes normal. And when the promised victory, that golden age restoration, fails to solve the problems of daily life, the bills, the inflation, the anxiety about the future, that anger turns and it targets its creator. The second bug, EGO. This network may look like a decentralized ghost, but the people who run it, Charlie Kirk, Ben Shapiro, Tucker Carlson, and their global copies, they are not invisible. They are rock stars with massive egos who feed on the spotlight. And history shows that revolutions led by rock stars always end up fighting among themselves for power and attention over who is the true believer of the playbook. They turn on each other. The ghost network begins to fight its own ghosts. But the biggest flaw, the biggest weakness, and for us the biggest hope, is that this machine is dependent on us. And that is the purpose of this documentary, to decipher this playbook, to make the Ghost Network visible so that you can recognize the players on the field, so you can see the tactics they use, and so you can understand that this engine runs on your data and your anger, because that stage in Budapest, that campus in Ohio, that election in Rome, and that phone in your hand, they are all part of the same global game. And in this game, you are not just a spectator. Whether you realize it or not, you are the game itself.